And we are on with the Assemblyman, New York State Assemblyman, Mr. Nader Sayegh, a usual guest on Yonkers Voice. Yonkers Voice is the platform that really can reach most people in Yonkers, and I would say lower Westchester County.
That's right.
Okay. But before we start, I need to make our usual disclaimer, Mr. Nader,
Sure.
so people know where we are.
Okay.
Yonkers Voice does not endorse or oppose any candidate. We welcome any candidate from regardless of the political spectrum to come on so we can inform the people where do they stand on issues, so you, the people, can make an educated decision about who deserves their vote. We don't take sides. We interview everyone regardless. If you are a serious candidate or a serious elected official, because there is officials that are not too serious. Okay. But if you are an elected official, a candidate, and want to be on to talk to the people of Yonkers, give us a call. Our email, it's on this thread, on the topic. Contact us there and let us know. Mr. Nader, thank you. Thank you always for taking the time.
Ru, it's a pleasure to be on Yonkers Voice. I've been on Yonkers Voice numerous times over the years, and it's always a terrific opportunity to speak about issues, about concerns, about some of the progress as public officials we've undertaken and accomplished. And I appreciate this opportunity. As you know, I'm up for re-election. The New York State Assembly election cycles are every 2 years. I was elected in 2018, re-elected in 2020, and this November 8th, it's a re-election to my seat as a New York State Assemblyman. So I'm looking forward to this opportunity to talk about issues, concerns, and basically my accomplishments, why I feel I deserve to be re-elected. So thank you, Ru.
Mr. Nader, that's the whole point of this. So let's go back, let's rewind the tape when you ran for the first time, and the issues that you believe back then were important, and I'm sure that you still believe they are important.
Sure.
But let's talk about those accomplishments.
Sure.
Tell us what you accomplished.
Well, in 2018, when I ran, everybody knows I'm a lifelong Yonkers educator. I've had the privilege with the Yonkers Public Schools to serve as a teacher. I was a school principal for over 30 years. I became a trustee of the Board of Ed, president of the Board of Ed, taught college courses. So I understand education from pre-K. My goal in 2018, among many other issues, was to increase the amount of funding for public education. The Yonkers Public Schools, I felt, because of the outdated New York State funding formula, was being shortchanged. Yonkers kids were being shortchanged. We were forced over the years to cut back on music and arts and sports and library, and largely because we weren't funded fairly. They included Yonkers as part of Westchester County, that of course is a rich county, and therefore the state gave us per kid a lot less money than they gave similar students in Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse. So I went up to Albany to fight for changes, and we've achieved a lot of progress. During my term, in less than 4 years, the Yonkers school system has upgraded and elevated its amount of state funding by nearly $250 million. So that type of an increase is significant. And I don't say it's Nader Sayegh, it's the entire Westchester delegation. We have the chair of the Education Committee, Shelley Mayer. You have the majority leader of the New York State Senate, Andrea Stewart-Cousins. And then you have the dean of the Westchester Assembly delegation, James Gary Pretlow. It's that team of experience, of understanding of what the concerns, that truly fight for the benefit of not only Yonkers, but Westchester County, and to a large extent, what impacts New York State. So for me, that's a major accomplishment. It's not a tax that's finished. We have a lot more work to do, to fight for more equity, more funding for after school, for internet, for technology, for adult education, and a lot of other areas. You understand Yonkers as an urban school district, a very large English language learner population, a large special ed population, and these type of learning atmospheres require more funding. So my role and my understanding of education allows me to bring that message to Albany and to lobby my colleagues and people at the governor's level and other levels to say, hey, make sure you fund education in a proper and equitable manner. And that's what we've done.
And Mr. Nader, and what about the things that you wanted to accomplish, but for one reason or another, you were not able to, and why?
Well, there's a number of areas. You know, we often talk about what we're able to accomplish. You know, and I as a legislator, I look at the role of an assemblyman as really being, you know, two-folded. You know, we have offices, for example, in my district in Yonkers, and that's where we focus on constituent services. And we're one of the few offices that throughout the pandemic, my staff and myself were always busy at work. We never left the office. We took on thousands of calls and issues with unemployment claims, small business applications, even issues that required local government involvement in Yonkers or the county or the state. We undertook that. My goal was to really also become, and as I have been, a very active legislator in Albany, and that is being involved with legislation and changing rules that, for example, impact Yonkers and New York State residents. And I gotta say, although I've been listed as one of the most active in nearly 4 years since I was elected, I have been involved as a sponsor or a co-sponsor of nearly 3,000 bills, which is really amazing. And about a month and a half ago, Governor Hochul, in 1 week, signed 3 of my legislative bills. I mean, major accomplishment as a legislator to have 3 new policies or laws impacting New York signed by the governor, of course unanimously approved by the Assembly and Senate. To me, that was major. The Diaper Act bill that exempts diaper taxes helped a lot of parents. Nearly a third of parents, mothers, that were complaining to me that we can't afford diapers. I can't keep a dry, clean diaper on my kid. Or adults that use adult diapers, you know, were having a serious problem. So that reduced the cost of diapers. Yonkers, for example, had a 5% tax on diapers. That's gone now. The gas relief, the inflation, the checks we gave practically every homeowner, about $1,000 back in rebates, helps homeowners that are really having a terrific concern about rising cost of taxes and water bills and utility bills and mortgage bills. These are the type of things that we do. What hasn't moved forward, there's a lot of other legislation that I've sponsored that, you know, continuously I got to continue to lobby to make sure that my colleagues understand, that the state officials, as I said, one of them is a legislation piece that I have in Albany that deals with more equity and funding for the renovation and building of school buildings. Now, we know in Yonkers, we're a school district where we're having a serious problem with available seats. We're like short 5,000 seats. We take away library space and music and art just to make sure we have enough classroom space. And the average school building in Yonkers, so many of them are like 100 years or older. You know, so how can you make them safe and convenient for learning with the pandemic, with COVID, with the need for proper ventilation and so forth? These are the type of things, legislative pieces that the state sometimes stalls on. And I got to continue to fight and say that similar to the school funding formula, the way they fund the renovation and the building of new schools is unfair to Yonkers. Yonkers used to get 50 cents a dollar a few years back when I was board president. We were getting 50 cents a dollar on building new schools or renovating. Meanwhile, communities like Buffalo and Rochester and Syracuse, you know what they were getting? They were getting 98 cents on a dollar. And there's no difference with the student population that, for example, Buffalo serves and Yonkers serves. So to me, that was injustice. And that really made it extremely difficult for us to say, hey, we have a need for 5,000 seats. We should at least be building immediately 3 new schools. But unfortunately, when you got to pay 50 cents a dollar of that cost that comes from Yonkers residents and taxpayers, it becomes unaffordable. So we had to pull back and agree to build 1 school. And we started already building the Judge Sotomayor School, where the former St. Dennis on McLean. So it's progress, but there's delays there. So I'm saying, hey, bring Yonkers up to the same levels that Buffalo and Rochester and other urban schools, so we can renovate our schools, we can build more schools, we can have more affordable space, so that our kids can learn in a safe and clean environment.
What's coming up? You seem like you've done a lot. Is the job done? Is there other priorities that you need another term, Mr. Nader, or is it time to pass the baton?
I've only just begun. You know, that's my theme. Anybody that knows me, I've been a Yonkers resident practically my entire life. And if you look at the last at least 45 years, there isn't a board or a commission, and this is before assembly, before politics. Anybody that knows me, whether it's serving as chairman of the Parks Board or the Board of Education, or being on law enforcement, anti-crime agencies, or hospital boards, or youth organizations, or community-based organizations, that's my passion. My passion is to see Yonkers grow. You know, fortunately, we've seen our city grow from number 4 in the state. Now we're number 3 in the state. A lot of it is because of development. A lot of it is because, you know, the administrations here in this town have been at least very favorable to development and bringing investments into the city. As a legislator, we're very involved with my colleagues on the state level in making sure that we support organizations like MGM that purchased Empire Casino, and they're on the verge of having a table gambling license that will regenerate enormous amount of new jobs, and not only for Yonkers, for the entire Westchester, Bronx, that region of New York. We also encourage and supported the advancement of UPS. That's another major organization. And you know, recently, we're now Yonkers on the Hudson with Lionsgate and Great Point Studios. Now we're like one of the major film producing entities in the entire country. This is what is making us a growing, a vibrant city. And as a legislator, I know it takes state representatives, county, city, federal representatives to really work together. That's why when U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer became majority leader, that was really whether people agreed with him on every political issue or not. The fact of having the United States Senator, who's a majority leader from New York, you know, provided us, in my opinion, with a lot of additional funding for affordable housing, for education, for health care, and so forth. To have Andrea Stewart-Cousins as the majority leader of the New York State Senate and a person who lives in Yonkers, really, in my opinion, advances our cause. To have an educator like myself who understands education at all levels, to be a legislator on the Education Committee, on the Health Committee, race and wagering, banking, property taxation. I undertook those responsibilities because I felt they were crucial for the city I represent, for the constituents I represent. And that's my job. No matter what my personal opinion may be, I gotta reflect on what is the issues that concern the majority of Yonkers residents and how can I best address them, whether through change in legislation or lobbying for more funding or promoting more interaction between intergovernment agencies. We had situations where projects in Yonkers weren't being completed, and I had state officials complaining, well, it's really the delays from the city. And I had city officials saying, hey, we've done everything we had to. So my office became a liaison between state agencies and city government to say, hey, there's an issue there. We don't want finger pointing. How do we resolve it?
Yeah. Now, Mr. Nader, talk about legislation. That is an issue, in the current society that we live in. It's totally different than the one that when your parents lived in, my parents lived in, or when you and I were growing up. Harassment. Years ago, harassment, and we had laws to deal with harassment. If somebody kept calling your house on the phone, there were laws to protect you against that type of harassment.
Sure.
On today's age and technology, the harassment is made through these things.
Cyberbullying.
Cyberbullying.
Right? That's right.
We have people, not just in Yonkers, but in Yonkers we have a few that feel that they can get traction by harassing others with unfounded things. Isn't it time yet to put a legislation in place that will protect citizens and people from unethical individuals that use the new technology to harass others? I'm on social media, you are on social media, and there is many others, millions on social media.
That's right.
And right here in Yonkers, we see a lot of harassment through social media. Isn't it time yet to do something about it?
It is time, and you bring up a good point. We live in a democracy, and we agree that politics is such where people may have different opinions and different views on how to legislate or how to take action or the lack of action. And I don't mind if somebody disagrees with the position I take.
Mr. Nader, I'm sorry. We are not, I think we're all intelligent enough to understand that disagreement is one thing.
Correct.
Malicious
that's
harassment.
That's the difference.
With the intent to hurt, cause pain, and get others involved in causing pain to the person that I'm harassing, it's a whole different ball game.
You're right, and I was getting to that point that under normal politics, disagreement is fine, difference of opinion is fine, but to your point, and I agree with you that it's gone to a different level where people that don't even know each other, people that have never seen a person, that have never verified, go out and make defamatory statements and remarks about individuals, and they attack individuals intentionally. That, to me, I agree, is illegal. The system and the laws in place, should be able to protect someone, from this intentional defamation of a person that really incites sometimes violence, can cause harm to a person individually, to their families, to their business, to their reputation, and this is uncalled for. So I agree with you. I'm a little concerned because I've had some similar treatment, and I'm sure by some of the similar and same sources that don't even know me, don't even know my legislation, don't know my policies, my involvement, my views, that attack and attack and attack, looking to incite. And I know individuals are already looking at taking legal action, because that's overstepping a person's responsibility. And that's overstepping to the point where I agree with you. In my opinion, it's criminal, because when somebody knowingly knows that what they're saying is not the truth, that it's all distorted, and they intentionally go out to defame, and they accuse people, and they attack people, and they harass people, that's a no-no. And I myself, to your point, feel that, is it something legislatively? If it is, I have no problem beginning to research the present laws we have in place, and if they are in place, then to go to the local law enforcement, to go to the county level and state level, on my level, state level police, and to say, hey, that's intentional defamation and harassment. It crosses the line. I need action to be taken. And if for whatever reason in the law it's not clear enough or strong enough, then maybe that's an area that we need to undertake. And most of the legislation that we took action on over the last number of years has really come out of discussions with individuals where people say, Assemblyman, there's an issue and it really isn't right, and the law doesn't go far enough or doesn't address the issue. And we put the language in that strengthens the law and allows it to function in a better way. And a lot of the legislation we've passed or have in the works presently do just that. So to your point, I think maybe it's time we do the research on legislation that deals with cyberbullying, with intentional defamation and harassment, and especially maybe the standard is different for me as a public official. People can attack me a little more, but you're a private citizen. And for individuals to go and defame private citizens that are not public officials, it really is...
It's a whole different ballgame.
It's a different ballgame.
But perhaps this goes also for our Yonkers Police Department. Cyberbullying is not just when a husband is cyberbullying the wife. If a regular citizen maliciously is cyberbullying somebody else, it's still cyberbullying.
Correct.
Please act on it.
That's the truth. Legislation, just to give you an idea, we spoke about the diaper bill and how now it's law in New York State. I had my daughter last Christmas pull out of the drawer a gift card, and the gift card, she thought she was going to use it. I'm not sure what department store, but it had expired by a couple of months. And the thought came to mind that, if you're paying for it, it's not a promotional where the store or the business has a right to say, hey, we gave you a 6 months promotional, you got to act on it. But if somebody pays for a gift card, why should it expire? Mm-hmm. So we had legislation approved unanimously by the Assembly and Senate, signed by the governor. So now it's law that gift cards won't expire no more. That's something that's similar. With all the storms and the hurricanes that took place, utility companies, it was cheaper for them to wait for the storm to come and then assess the damage and then start ordering, repair. Sometimes trucks coming from Ohio and Massachusetts and Pennsylvania, that took them days and sometimes a week to respond. So legislation we sponsored and passed, demands mandatory plans in place to make sure that utility companies make sure utilities, are available for emergency services, for police, fire, EMS, ambulance service, to make sure generators are checked and are ready to operate, to make sure that when they know a storm is coming, that they have local repair companies ready to remove trees off wires and take care.
We need more proactive legislation that will deal with situation before actually something real bad happens.
Correct.
And in regards to cyberbullying, bad things are already happening. There is lots of young kids who have committed suicide because they couldn't deal with the harassment that is being made through social media.
Correct.
There is violence that has been committed because of social media bullying.
Sure.
So we need legislation that will deal with those things. But now let's move into something else.
Sure.
So now election is coming up 36 days away from now.
That's right.
Okay? How important, Mr. Nader, and I always ask you this question, is not enough just to sit down and talk about elections, is not enough just to talk about plans for the future,
True.
and it's not enough to complain about it, things after the election.
Correct.
What's important, or very important, is to cast that vote to make sure you make the right choice. Why are you the right choice?
It's the right choice because our role in a democracy, we're fortunate to live in a democracy, and when we fail to cast that vote, then in my opinion we shouldn't complain, we shouldn't get upset, because if you live in a democracy and you have the right to vote and you don't vote, then you really don't have a right to complain, you don't have a right to voice your opinion, because to voice your opinion and to speak up is only completed when you're able to say, well, you know what, I spoke up and I took action and I voted for the best person. Doesn't matter what the seat is, whether you're voting for a city councilman, a legislator, the mayor, the county exec, the assemblyman, the senator, the governor, the president, U.S. senators, at any level, your job as citizens is to say to yourself, hey, what do I believe in? What do I see right and wrong? And who from those individuals seeking my vote and support, who is best in a position to provide me with that leadership? I feel, since I was elected in 2018 to represent the best interest of Yonkers, I've accomplished that. As I said earlier, very few legislators, if legislation is a major component of the responsibility of the state assemblyman, I've accomplished that. In less than 4 years, to be a sponsor or co-sponsor of nearly 3,000 bills is really an indication of my serious attempt to impact legislation. Anybody that knows as an attorney, I know how to interpret the law, I know how to legislate, I know how to look at issues and study how we can modify them. As someone from the Yonkers perspective, my level of involvement with constituent services speaks for itself. My office never closed. Anybody that follows my social media, my weekly newsletters that we put out online, I'm very active. I'm very active because I believe in Yonkers. I understand the city. As an educator, I think our record of producing funding, necessary funding for the Yonkers Public Schools speaks for itself. The advancement in healthcare, in child care, in mental illness and job training programs, in affordable housing. These are all initiatives that as a legislator, later working with my colleagues, that I've accomplished. And I feel that in less than in 4 years, there's been a track record that people can look at me as a public official and say, what has Nader Sayegh done? Does he deserve our support? And honestly, I feel not only deserving, but I feel that Yonkers now, even moving forward, needs stability there. You need a strong delegation. You have one of the strongest delegations representing our city and county. Why change it? And I'm not somebody that's been there 10 years, as some of my opponents have, with no track record, with no viable legislation. I'm someone that from A to Z, if you were to check off what normal residents and citizens want in their representatives, I think I check off on all of them. So November 8th, I really call on Yonkers, my constituents. I'm the only state representative that completely serves in the city of Yonkers. Other people may have parts of Yonkers and other parts of the county. I'm totally Yonkers. So for me, even though I may have 75% of the city, my seat is completely in Yonkers, and my staff and I will serve anyone from Yonkers. It doesn't matter if they're in somebody else's assembly district or senatorial or whatever. Yonkers is Yonkers. And to me, Yonkers is a city that you have to deal with and address on a citywide basis.
Well, guys, you heard it, but guess what? At the end of the day, that decision, it's yours.
Correct.
If you feel that Mr. Nader is the person for the job, if you trust him, if you're happy with the work that he has done up to now, then vote for him.
That's right.
Again, I'm not endorsing or opposing. I'm informing you about his platform so he can speak about his work, his plans for the future, but that decision is totally yours. Don't complain after November.
Correct.
Vote. I see a lot of comments on social media, especially on Yonkers Voice. Why am I going to vote for? Things will continue to be the same. I never voted before. Well, that's because that's one of the reasons why things continue to be the same, because you don't exercise your voting right. So vote. Now, Mr. Nader,
Sure.
I got to put you on the spot because otherwise they're going to say, hey, you work for Mr. Nader, this is an info commercial. I have to put you on the spot.
Sure.
There is a lot of conversation about term limits and term extensions.
Yeah.
There is a lot of talk that Mayor Mike Spano might run for another 4th term.
Correct.
If he decides to run, of course, if everything goes in line, they pass it and all that happens, what is your position on term limits?
Well, term limits, you know,
What extensions?
it's a very controversial issue. You know, when voters vote on term limits, you know, the expectation is that term limits are maintained. Now, when we look at situations on the federal level, you look at congressional people, you look at the U.S. Senator, we spoke earlier about Senator Chuck Schumer. If there was term limits, then Chuck Schumer wouldn't have been there. And if there was term limits, then Chuck Schumer wouldn't have been majority leader. And we spoke earlier about how it benefits New York tremendously having someone with the power and experience of a Chuck Schumer. So many people will argue, and I see that view, that sometimes term limits may work against the best interests of a state like New York or a county or a city of Yonkers. Many people will look at the accomplishment of the administration and say, hey, there's a lot of positive things going on. Why should we change it this time? Many other individuals on the opposite end, you know, feel that term limits should be mandatory and there should be no opportunity to extend them. That the initial intent was to make sure that power sometimes, or incumbency sometimes, causes not only absolute power, but very often, you know, corruption in the eyes of many people, that there should be change within a reasonable time. So, from my understanding, the mayor has not made a decision yet, and the mayor has taken the position of relying on the opinion of the majority of people in Yonkers. So to your point, people that are listening should speak up. There's going to be many opportunities to say, hey, is progress such where we want the mayor to say a 4th term, or, you know, change in administrations is crucial. That's the whole basis of term limits, and therefore let's make sure that there is no term limit extension. You know, so I myself see it both ways. I really do. And I'm in a position where, you know, I'm also seeking and looking at public opinion, and we're looking at which way the public reaches a decision on this matter. And we'll take it, you know, we'll take it as it comes. People I know have mentioned my involvement, you know, and looking to the future. And I often say that I'm seeking re-election to my assembly seat. And that's my goal, that's my intention, that's where my efforts are. And people say, well, what if? My attitude is, what if comes after what if, you know? What if really is determined and based on decisions people make, referendums, if any, people decide to run or not to decide to run, and then I'll take it from there. My election is what's important for me now.
I think I asked you that question in one of our interviews.
Correct.
Would the mayorship be in your course for the future? You gave me the political answer.
Correct.
I'm focused now on this, blah, blah, blah.
Of course.
And I understand. We also asked Mayor Spano that very same question in our last interview. Mayor, are you running or not running? Well, right now I'm not running. Okay, might be running for the executive, Westchester County executive, but who knows?
Yeah.
Well, I guess the people of Yonkers can express their opinions one way or the other. The way I'm looking at it is like, look, even if there is another term, and if the people are not happy, on election day, vote for the opponent.
That's all.
Speak your opinion on that voting day. Just because he runs again does not necessarily mean that he's going to win again if the people of Yonkers
People decide
otherwise.
That's what you started your show with. You're the voice. Don't complain unless you practice your right to vote.
Correct.
And if you're happy, you vote for the individuals. If you're not happy, you have the right to vote against them.
Exactly.
You know, but I gotta say, I had an event recently, and a re-election campaign fundraiser, and I was really blessed to have a terrific turnout, terrific crowd, and especially to have the mayor, Mike Spano, endorse me. Along with the county executive and Senator Shelley Mayer. So really, for me, it's a blessing, with 6 weeks or so left to the campaign, to get my major partners in education on the local and state and county level to agree and say, hey, Nader Sayegh should be reelected. So for me, I'm a team player. I'm a team player, but I'm not anybody's, left or right hand. Anybody that knows me, I'm Nader Sayegh. I have a history in this town. I look at the issues, I study them. I look at, what the benefits or the disbenefits. And at the end of the day, I try very hard to be decisive and to make decisions. And fortunately, I'm happy. I'm happy with the track record. I'm happy with the legislation I've undertaken. And very happy with my staff and myself and my office, because we kept on track. We really kept on track and responded to the concerns people, my constituents have. And that's my basis, to represent their best interests.
Well, you heard it from the Assemblyman, New York State Assemblyman Nader Sayegh. Now the decision is yours. If you want him for another term, don't forget to vote on November. What day?
November 8th.
November 8th. Early vote starts when?
It starts about 8 to 9 days before. So the exact date would be put out. But with absentee ballots, paper ballots, I understand the governor mailed out absentee ballots to so many voters. So if you receive one, hold on to it. If you feel it's simpler for you to vote by absentee ballot, you don't have the same restrictions as in the past. Practically anyone can vote by absentee ballot, paper ballot, early voting, and election day, November 8th. So there's no reason, there's no reason not to vote. Anybody that tells you, well, I had school, I had work, I had this, there's no reason. November 8th, early voting, paper ballot, absentee ballot. So I'm encouraging everyone listening, please go out and vote. If your kids are in college, send them their paper absentee ballots. Everyone should vote. It's a democracy. It's your right to vote. And vote for who you feel best represents your interests.
So you know how the songs go. I don't care how you get here, just get here.
That's
Well, we're
right.
going to change that line. We don't care how you vote, just make sure you vote. On that note, we conclude our interview. Mr. Nader, thank you always,
Rule,
sir,
thank
for
you.
taking the time. Until next time, guys, we have good interviews coming up next week. I'm going to keep that under wraps, but I will announce it in the next day or two. Thank you for watching, guys. Don't forget to support Yonkers Voice. Send us some stars our way. But that is not the only way to support Yonkers Voice. You can also support us by asking your friends, family, to join Yonkers Voice on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube channel, don't forget, subscribe and turn the notifications on so you get notified every single time we go live. We don't want you to lose a single minute of our live interviews. Until next time, guys.